So the new fight has, I should say the old fight actually, has reared its ugly head again, namely the fight on right-wing populism. So let me go ahead and throw this up on the screen. Cenk tweeted the following on this issue. He said, social issues are really important and worth fighting over, but maybe the left wing and the right wing should consider uniting on economic issues against corporate rule. We agree a lot more than people realize on those issues. Then we can go back to kicking each other's ass. So he continues there. You can see it on the screen. It says, people on the left need to stop assuming that our side would immediately get duped by the right wing into voting for some racist fascist. Sure, be extremely cautious, but what if we trick them into voting to raise their own wages or giving themselves free health care? I don't want anyone thinking I'm telling people to vote Republican. Their politicians are the worst people on earth, and you don't hold hands with extremist groups. You obviously fight them. But what if there are right-wing voters who also have the corporate rule and corruption, who also, hate the corporate rule and corruption? So what I would say to Cenk on this is, correct. That's right. And that's something I've advocated for a long time. I know Crystal's advocated for a long time. There are many of us on the left that advocate for it. And he made the important distinction. The distinction is the politicians are corrupt. They're full of shit. All of them on the right are like that. Even the ones they hold up as the ideal right-wing populists like Josh Hawley. He was against $15 minimum wage. He's for what's called right to work, which is anti-union stuff, which is just right to work for less, 11% less, mind you. So the politicians are totally full of shit. But to Cenk's point, if you look at polling data, there are plenty of right-wing voters who don't even realize that they're actually pretty left-wing on economics. So they would be pro-union. They would be pro-living wage. They would be anti-corruption. And the list goes on and on. So, a good example of this is the former two times Obama voters who thought they were voting for change, and then they flipped to Trump thinking, hey, maybe Trump will bring the change and not outsource my job. Well, guess what? Trump did outsource your job, so they were duped again. They were duped by Obama, and they were duped by Trump. But those people who were two times Obama voters and flipped to Trump, many of them, assuming they're voting for economic reasons, they're not bad people. Now, they did overlook the Trump bigotry, but be honest and clear about what they were voting for. If they tell you I was voting for higher wages or voting to not outsource my job, that's what they mean. So in other words, those people are gettable, and take yes for an answer if you can change their mind. The voters, the average Joes and Janes, are the ones who we can reach. And by the way, over time, you could change their opinion even more to where eventually they might not identify as a right-winger. So I think Cenk is right about that. Now let me go ahead and show Vaush's response to this, because this I think is really interesting. And I think he also has a point. So Vaush says, if right-wing populists were actually interested in economic reform, they would have supported Bernie. Instead, they support pro-oligarch billionaires like Trump. Why? Because right-wing economic populism is a hook to pull people to the right, not an actual policy goal. Agree on solutions, not problems. If right-wingers want better health care, fine, good. If they want you to drop the woke nonsense because it's preventing them from working with us towards economic goals, tell them to suck it up and prove their commitment to those goals. In other words, if economic reform is their real priority, why will they compromise on economic reform for Trump, but won't compromise on progressive issues for economic reform? So listen, he's correct also. And actually, I don't think what he said contradicts what Cenk said at all. I think they're both right. The thing I would say to Vaush is this. To his first tweet, and again, I'll just read it for you. You don't have to throw it up on the screen, Eric. It's okay. I'll just read this out loud. If right-wing populists were actually interested in economic reform, they would have supported Bernie. Instead, they supported pro-oligarch billionaires like Trump. So to this, I will say, you have to be willing to give them room to say, I fucked up and I was duped. And I really thought that Trump would bring about economic change. I really thought he would stop the outsourcing. I really thought he would raise wages. I really thought he'd be good for unions. I really thought he'd bring back Glass-Steagall, which is something, apparently they say they tried to put that in the Republican platform, which is, you wouldn't expect that, but he tried to put it in, but he didn't do anything on that front. If anything, he deregulated. You have to give people the room to say, I fucked up, I was wrong, Trump was a fraud, just like Obama was a fraud. But yes, it would have been very interesting to see if it was Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump in the general. Yeah, I would argue that after the 4 years of Trump where he proved he was a fraud, if you're a real economic populist, you would have had to have supported Bernie over Trump. Because Bernie is the real deal populist, and Trump is a fraud populist, and we had 4 years to prove Trump was a fraud populist. And so if you decided, like Tucker Carlson would have done this for sure, he would have kept pretending to be populist, but he would have supported Trump over Bernie, and he wouldn't have called out Trump's fake populism and how he lied, and he would focus on social issues in regards to Bernie and pretend like Bernie is so woke and Bernie is so extreme on social issues. So I really think that Vaush is right about this too. And again, so the main takeaway, guys, is this. Really, this is a matter of emphasis. So the thing that Vaush likes to do a lot is he likes to point out how right-wing populists it's fraudulent. It's not real, especially when it comes to the politicians. It's not real. And that's what he emphasizes. But, somebody like me, I like to emphasize the fact that, well, hold on now. There are plenty of people who are gettable among the voters, among the average Joes and Janes, and don't give up hope on them. Take yes for an answer when they give you yes. Keep chipping away over time. Keep changing minds over time. And so if he focuses on the right-wing populists or frauds, and I'm focusing on true, but there are voters and average Joes and Janes who believe in it and we shouldn't give up on them, those things are not mutually exclusive. Both things can be true, and that's why I always try to make that distinction. The elected officials, the politicians who pretend to be populist right, are provably not populist. They're just not that. So I'll harp away on that, but people who point that out should also harp away on the fact that there is a giant distinction between voters, regular people, average Joes and Janes, and the politicians. The politicians are frauds. There are many people who are regular people who are gettable and who are sincere in their right-wing populism. And let me tell you something. And Crystal knows this firsthand because she's lived all around the country in places that had many people that fit this demographic. There are plenty of beer-drinking, cursing, regular dudes, politically incorrect dudes in unions with potbellies who have some socially backwards ideas that I would disagree with and you would probably disagree with, but they would actually support a candidate who's fighting for a $15 minimum wage and union rights and against right to work, so-called right to work, and anti-corruption stuff. They would support that candidate over somebody who's a fake populist who just talks about wokeness all day long. So don't give up hope on the voters. Don't give up hope on the average Joes and Janes. Keep fighting to change their mind and hold hands in solidarity with them when you could get them to agree with you. But yes, never stop pointing out that it is a trick. It is a trick. There are plenty of Wall Street-owned, military-industrial complex-owned, multinational corporation-owned politicians like Josh Hawley who are doing the fake populist tap dance, but really they've shown no commitment to real populism, or they would have supported the $15 minimum wage. He voted against that. Or they would be for the PRO Act. He's against the PRO Act. They would be against so-called right to work because it's right to work for less, but he's not. So, as usual in this discourse, what you have is people talking directly over each other's heads, okay? I want everybody to try their best, especially when dealing with other people who are supposed to be in the camp or whatever, or on the left. Steelman your opponent's argument and operate in good faith. Because unfortunately now on the left, there's this big breakdown and everybody's yelling at each other and everybody assumes bad faith in the other people. And you're never going to win fucking anything. If you can't even hold together the left coalition, never mind expand it, you're not going to win Dickie McGeezack, son. You're not going to win anything. So everybody needs to sort of grow up a little bit and take yes for an answer when you're given yes, and be charitable to people when having these debates and discussions, and steelman your opponent's argument wherever they may be. So that's my advice on this. Listen, it's a topic I'm interested in, and I'll continue to be interested in it. And honestly, when you look at the Cenk take here, maybe this wasn't his take in the past. I'm happy it's his take now. And when you look at the Vaush take, I think Vaush's take is correct on this as well. I don't think it's at odds. And we're going to be having this dialogue for a long time, but hopefully I'm helping to convince people to the position where I am, which is, again, yeah, talk about how the politicians are frauds and they're not real populists. But there are plenty of regular people in the country who are right populists. And to smear them, to kick them to the curb because there are some issues of disagreement or whatever, I think that's not the right approach.